Good afternoon, LEC community. Buenas tardes. I'm going to start using more Spanish these days, by the way, Eric. Um, I'm so happy to welcome you to another edition of Ask an Educator. Today we have a fantastic educator, Erik Erazo, from Olathe Public Schools. Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm great, brother. How are you, man?
I started off my morning well today. I felt like I had the opportunity to go see you and see some of the work that you were doing, and so I was revved up, energized by what I saw earlier today. So I appreciate you letting me be in your space earlier.
Well, I'm glad you can make it out, man. We're always happy to show off what we're doing.
No, it was fantastic. For those of you watching, thank you so much for joining us today. Feel free to comment and ask questions. That's what we're here for. But we'll just jump right in. So, Eric, for those of us that don't know you well, tell us a little bit about you.
A little bit about me. Well, let's see. Currently, I'm the coordinator of diversity and engagement for the Olathe School District. I didn't start off that way. I don't know how far back you want me to go, but
I think that let's go back. Let's go
okay.
back.
All right, sounds good. So yeah, man. So I'm originally from the Mission District of San Francisco, so that's where Carlos Santana is from. There's actually a movie called La Misión, so if you get a chance to check that out, that's my neighborhood. So a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, and that's where I grew up. I think I did pretty good in school up until about fifth grade, and then after that, I started kind of veering a little bit, and by the time I was in middle school, I was, kind of getting into a little bit of trouble. 15 years old, I got my then girlfriend pregnant. At 16, I was a dad. And then I wasn't doing great in school at that time for sure. And then I really, really thought that I needed to quit school to go to work and pay for, my daughter and take care of that kind of stuff. So I did. I left school. Actually, I was already in continuation school, which is, I was already kicked out of regular high school and into continuation school. And so I left school for quite a while until I was about 18. I met my wife, who I'm still married to, thank God, and met her, and my second daughter was born. So I was 18 years old with two kids, and I was like, man, I got to do something. So I was able to get my diploma through the mail from a private school in Florida. So I guess that'd be like online today, right? But back in the day, it was through mail, and then I decided that I wanted to go to school to be a mechanic because I've always been into lowriders and that's my thing. And I was like, you know what, I'll work on cars. When I went back to school to try to be a mechanic, they gave me a high school equivalency test. And even though I had, knocked out that high school diploma through the mail, man, I still didn't have a good education. And so I flunked it twice. And they said, you flunk it again, you got to take it like months later. So I found a program called Literacy Plus in the Hayward, California library, where retired teachers were helping people, grown-ups that didn't know how to read and write. So I went there, got the basics, and I was able to get into the program. So I did automotive for a couple years. Then I got a job, my very first job at a dealership. So for the longest time, I had been working in a bakery. Got a job at a dealership, and the very first job I get, man, I end up getting into some conflict with some dude. It was like I had changed who I was, to try to make things right, but I was still living surrounded by a bunch of folks that I didn't need to be around. And so, man, I gotta tell you, it's crazy, but I remember just praying, say, Lord, show me a sign. I need to get out of here, man. And on my way home, there was a big sign that said, "En el army si se puede." So I was like, okay, I hear you. So I went down to a recruiting office. No joke, man. I went down to a recruiting office and I talked to the sergeant. Everybody was Chicano in there. And I'm like, hey, bro, so here's the deal, right? If I sign up, can you get me out of here? And he's like, yeah, I think I could take care of that. And so I signed up, bro, and I took a couple of tests. And about 7, 8 months later, I was in Germany, which might have been a little further than I wanted to go, but but I got out, right? So while I was
Yeah,
in Germany,
that's definitely out of there for sure. Like
I
there's
got out of
no.
there for sure, man. And when I was out in Germany, my twins were born, so I was like 23 years old with 4 kids. I got out, my time was up. Went back to California. Didn't feel like I belonged there. Matter of fact, I remember one of the first conversations I had with an old homeboy I had grown up with, and he told me, he's like, "Hey, bro, I'm getting a part-time job," and I was like, "That's good, bro." And he's like, yeah, man, I'm going to save my money. I'm like, yeah, you should, bro. He's like, and then I'm going to buy a pound, right? And I was like, oh, man, you know what I mean? Like this mindset isn't where I'm at anymore. I don't want to be here. So I ended up having a cousin that lived in Kansas. And she said, hey, man, why don't you come down here and check it out? There's work down here. So I ended up driving down here to Kansas, man. And, this is before 2008. So the economy hadn't crashed yet. So I saw how cheap the houses were. I applied for a home loan, went back to California, and within a couple of days they said, hey, you've been pre-approved. I was like, what? Sounds good. So I came back here. I left my wife and kids in an apartment in El Cerrito, California. And then I ended up driving down here to Kansas. And when I got here, I still really didn't have a job. So I told my cousin to take me anywhere while my application got reviewed at Hummer. And she ended up taking me to a security company that hired me and said, can you start tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, man, what is it? They were like, oh, we need you to be a security guard at a high school. And I was like, nah, what else you got? And they're like, that's all we got, man. So I said, you know what? I'll take it. So that landed me at Olathe North High School 17 years ago, man, and I never left.
That's a phenomenal story. And before we even get to now, you're like the high school security guard. I want to so take me back. So you come to Kansas. What is that like?
It was a trip, man. Well, but just the beginning of it, me asking questions to my cousin, I remember I was like, yo, is there like stores out there? Like, how does, you know what I mean? Because that's how ignorant I was about, out here in the Midwest. But I think the scariest part, bro, was being here in a very strange place where I didn't see a lot of Latinos. And then thinking that I have to make it work because I have my wife and kids in an apartment back in El Cerrito that's $1,300 a month. And not only do I need to pay that rent, but I need to figure out a way to get them over here. And then I got to figure out a place to put them. And I need to get a car because the one I drove up here was breaking down. And so just the whole experience was overwhelming, man. It really was.
We got some love for you here. We have Dr. Clark saying, I met Eric at DBC that conference. This guy truly cares. He supported. Thanks for being here with us, Martin. So you walk into your first day, and so you're a security guard at a high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is that like? What did you expect, and what was surprising to you?
Well, to be honest, the craziest thing I think initially before I even started my first day with kids, I was given a tour of the high school, and I was just shocked at how nice it was and beautiful it was compared to where I had gone to school. Out in Trailas out back, right? And then coming here, I was like, man, this is really nice. But what I expected, I think, was I didn't expect much. I thought, you know what, I'm going to come in here, I do whatever I have to do. I'll be out of here in a couple of weeks. What I ended up seeing was a bunch of kids that at that time the Hispanic population was starting to grow, and I saw a bunch of Latino kids that didn't really belong, or they felt like they didn't belong. I saw some kids walking, talking, behaving like if they were in gangs, and I just couldn't understand why. And that's kind of how I got started, man, because I would go up to counselors and be like, hey, you might want to talk to this kid over here. He has this, on, or he has this, he's wearing certain, things that you might want to talk to him about. And they would say, well, why don't you do it? And I'm like, nah, I'm good, man. You do it, right? And they're like, nah, man, come on, give it a shot. So little by little, I started talking to kids. And once I got talking to them, I really did feel, and I got to tell you, there was one key point where I really did feel like a lot of the stuff that I had lived growing up was just a big mess, right? Like it was just craziness, and it was in a shaker bottle, and that was my life. It didn't make any sense to me, And then when I was talking to kids here, and they would say, you don't know what you're talking about, and I could tell them where I came from, and they would listen. All of a sudden, I think my life made sense. If that makes sense, there is a purpose for everything I had gone through, and all the stuff I have lived, and I could actually use it to help these kids. And that's when I said, okay, Lord, you want me to be a teacher? Make it happen.
I think that that's what we think about in terms of at this organization around representation matters, right? It's the idea that we all have different stories. We all grow up differently, but it's so important for our students to see people like yourself in the building that they can relate to and maybe share a lived experience or share a different way of thinking. And so you're exactly the person that we think about as we talk about representation, because first of all, that people will call you like an alternative or non-traditional pathway into education, right? And so there's a lot of programs already like built out that way. I love the fact that you went from security guard to educator, and even as your security guard, you're doing some education work, right? You're like there trying to navigate kids and talk to them and build relationships. Um, so tell me, what you love kids? What's your next role?
So when I started working with kids, like I said, and I decided, I said, you know what, I think this is my path. I think I need to be an educator. Now, I was scared, man, because like I said, it's not. I still have problems with spelling, and I didn't have a traditional good foundation to be a teacher, and I knew it was going to be something different. But I went up to a counselor that used to work here. His name was Janet Bachnick, and I said, Ms. Bachnick, what do I have to do to be a teacher? And she kind of giggled and she said, well, you're going to have to go to school and it's going to take, 4 years. And I was like, all right, and so I started going to Kansas City, Kansas Community College. So I would do, school. I was the ISS teacher. That was my first job. I was the ISS teacher. So I would do ISS, and then I would do detention until 4, and then I would drive from Olathe to Kansas City to go to class, and then I would be there till 10, 11 at night, and do that 5 days a week while I was working. But I started creating a program which I always had in my mind, which was Hispanic Leadership Club. And what I did was really start analyzing data with dropout rates and gang involvement in big cities like Chicago, New York. And you could see a strong correlation, right? Wherever you see a high dropout rate, you also see, gang increasing. And so I was like, man, what is their formula that's sometimes better than what the schools are doing, or different community groups? And what I realized was, man, it was all relationship building. Kids get introduced to this mentality at the elementary age. I mean, I remember being a little kid and buying the little homies dolls or the calcomanía, with little things on it, and seeing just older friends and
I was
being in
always so
that.
jealous of that, by the way. Like, my parents would never buy those for me, but like, I was always wanting one. So that takes me
Yeah.
back. Anyways,
It does, man. And I remember having, and it's not like they themselves are bad, but it's starting to get you in that mindset, right? And then middle school, you get more responsibility. That's when, you're getting in trouble with the law, or, you whatever it is you're doing. And then by the time you're in high school, you're almost in too deep to quit, or at least that's how you feel. And traditionally, this is when you get called into the counselor's office, and the counselor's like, hey, listen, Joey, quit doing what you're doing, do better things. All right, man. Well, I'll see you in a couple of weeks, right? And it's just like, man, what are you tripping? Like, you want me to change everything about me, and like, this is what I know, this is what I do, you're just telling me to stop? That doesn't work. So I started when I started Hispanic Leadership Club, I started going to elementary schools, and I would introduce myself. I would just ask them about their life, and I wanted them to be open and relaxed with me, right? Like, a lot of times kids hold back, bro, because they're like, man, you're not going to understand what I'm going through, so why am I going to tell you? And I'll be like, hey, man, it's all good. If a kid was like, man, my dad's, been through deportation or whatever, I'd be like, man, I get it, and we could talk that out. But then I would also start talking to them about college, just because I know my parents didn't graduate from elementary in another country. So they sure weren't talking to me about KU and K-State, right? And so I'd be like, man, let's talk about that. What do you want to do when you grow up? And then I would hype them up, bro. I can't wait till you get to middle school, man, because we're doing community service projects, and it's going to be tight. So they'd be motivated to get into the club at middle school. Middle school, more responsibility, right? The community service projects, to go into colleges, getting guest speakers. By the time they get to me in the high school level, they're in too deep to quit, man. That's who they identify as. They've been part of this club since they were in elementary. So that was one of my first programs that I started.
you flipped the script. And before I ask you any more questions around that, so just want to welcome Lori. I already showed your comment, but want to make sure that I know that you're recognized here. We definitely have to share our lived experiences with our students. We're all human, right? At the end of the day. And then, Lori, thank you so much. I'm gonna take it. So, I'm absolutely gonna take a gift from you as a reminder of this moment. Eric, I'm interested. So you do the Hispanic, Leadership Club. Where are you learning about relationships? Right? Like, tell me, like it seems like it's natural to you, or it seems innate to who you are. But like, to even like amp them up and to hype them up for middle school, and to like know how to do that. Like, where did you get that from?
You know what, man? I think I think I would have to go way back to when I was a kid and feeling like I didn't have anybody do that for me. I always felt like, man, I really wanted to do more. I was surrounded by a lot of negativity, and I wanted to break out of that, but I never had anybody take me by the hand and say, "This is how you do it." And I just felt like when I see these kids, when I saw those kids, I really felt like I could see myself. And then I had my own kids that were around the same age as the kids that I was working with. And, I wanted to do it. And I think that for me, man, I think what really worked was I didn't do this. I wasn't the guy that grew up, playing with his little GI Joes and setting them up in a classroom setting and saying, when I grow up, I want to be a teacher, right? It wasn't about that for me, man. It was like literally saying, y'all can do better, you deserve better, and I don't want you to get stuck in this situation. So I want to do this. And so I really feel like I was just genuine with the kids, like, man, I'm still learning myself, I'm still going to school myself. I'm not traditionally a teacher. I came up from the hood in California, but I care about you, and I want to do the best that for you.
I mean, I love it, man. I think that is at the heart of the work that we try to do and we try to instill in people and make it okay. I guess some of my questions for you is, you said 17 years,
17 years, man.
and now remind me of your title again.
Coordinator of diversity and engagement.
Coordinator of diversity engagement. And I know last time we talked on Zoom, like I asked you a couple of questions of like all those kind of degrees back there. So you went from dropping out, right?
Yep.
To what do you like? Tell me about those degrees in the back there.
Mostly what's back there, man, is it's a few certificates from the military, from the schooling I took in the military, my associate's degree from automotive technology. I'm actually missing my bachelor's back there. I can't find it. It's in a box somewhere. And I have my master's up there and a few awards and things that I've won throughout the years. So that's mostly what that is.
When you look at that wall and that reminder, like, or you see it, like, what does that make you feel when you think about from where you came from?
You know what, man? It's that somebody said it earlier, that si se puede reality, right? Like, I think a lot of times, man, I've lived two different lives, man, and that's the crazy part, right? I've been to the point where my world was closed. I had reached the top, man. Like, I was barely making it. I was alive. I was eating. I was breathing, and that's as far as a lot of us think that we can go back where I come from. We're just lucky that we weren't dead at 21, right? And that's the end of that. And then to really learn this new world, which was scary. It was real scary because it took me out of my comfort zone, man. When I'm sitting there in my Comp 1 class in KCKCC, and I honestly am not exactly sure where I'm supposed to be putting periods or capitalizing letters or putting quotations, and it was a different trip. But then to be able to accomplish it and to say, man, si se puede, bro, you just got to put yourself in a different mindset, that you can do it. But then, you need people to have your back too, man, to kind of walk you and guide you through it, because it's not something that you just know. So I'm proud, definitely proud of myself, but I'm proud of the people around me, and I'm proud of my family for supporting me, specifically my wife, man, to say, hey, go take care of business. I mean, as a mechanic, I was making decent money, and I had to not, you know what I mean, to come in education and be below a para. I think I was making 12,000 a year at the very beginning, so it was a trip, man, but it was well worth it.
No, and I appreciate that reality. Lori says preach on that. Lori's, by the way, I don't know if you know Lori in real life or not, but like one of my favorite people. Um, I think so. Something that is striking to me, and I think is data that's important to share, is that nationally, the number of Latino male educators is 2%. So 2% of all educators identify as Latino men. Um, in Kansas City, we just released a report, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, around diversity numbers in our community, and only 1% of educators identify as Latinx, right? So Latino, Hispanic, everything in between. Um, so I suspect that there's an even smaller percentage in Kansas City of Latino male teachers.
Mhm.
Tell me about, like, how does that resonate with you? How does that make you feel? And why do you think we don't see more men in the profession?
That's a great question, man. I think number one, what it makes me think is I got to do a real good job in my position right now and recruit and get folk interested because I know there's a lot of them out there. One of the young men that I mentored when I started working is now, I think actually you met him today, G, who is now in school to be a teacher himself. And there's another young man who, Manuel, who was in my clubs, who's now an educator somewhere else in Kansas. And I think it's key to have men of color step up that are in education to reach back down, right? I think a lot of times with the reality, man, is that we move up and we're like, woof, I'm up here, man, I'm good, right? And it's like, hey, don't forget, man, we got to reach back down and talk to our folk and motivate them if that's where they want to be, and let them know that's a possibility, right? Like when I talk to little kids, man, and we're talking about what do you want to do when you grow up. You get a lot of your soccer players and this and that. And I go, do you ever think about being a teacher too? And there's something that usually you don't think about. It's not a traditional role. So I think introducing it, I think for the people that are interested, that are already in college or trying to take the classes, that we should connect with them as much as we possibly can and help them walk through it. I remember going to KCKCC, bro, and I wanted to be a teacher, so I grabbed a brochure, that said secondary education, and I took all the classes in, and then I found out it was to be a para on KCK. I didn't know, I didn't know what I was supposed to be taking, or where do you go next, So I think we just need to guide our younger people. A lot of the Latinos that enter education as paras or aides because they want to be teachers, but they don't know how to reach that goal. Let's help them out, man. Let's get together and show them the path.
Your story reminds me of like I took a whole summer of schooling for classes that I didn't actually need, and
Yeah.
so that was rough. Um, but I know a little bit about business law now, so that's
There you
always a
go.
win. I'm going to ask you this question, and you may not have a good answer to this yet. But as you progress in your career, like I wonder, it's a two-part question. Like one, what kind of challenges have you yourself faced in growing your pathway in leadership in the education space? But also, like, how does your Latino identity, is it important to you to lean in from that space, or like is it just another thing for you?
Oh man, that's a great question. How did it, man? Let me tell you some of the challenges that I faced, and I think a lot of them were very real, and a lot of them, were holding me back because I kept allowing them to. I think when I first started in education, even though I absolutely knew why I was going into education and the kids that I wanted to help, I looked around, man, and I was like, ugh, I don't fit into this group. I don't look like this group. I don't act like this group. I better learn how to act like this group and how to assimilate to them. And I was really forcing myself to be who I wasn't because I thought that's something I had to do to be able to grow as an educator. And I got to a point where I said no. I bring something different and I'm able to relate to these kids because I'm going to be who I want to be. And I did that, man. I mean, I am not traditionally, and I don't look at all like an educator. I mean, look at me, man. You know what I'm saying? But I'm here because I got to tell you this. I got to give credit to the Olathe School District because I had nothing but support. I never had anybody telling me, no, you can't do this, or or you have to change the way you do this or that. It was really me thinking that I should. But once I was able to let go of that, and I had a bunch of mentors that were principals and different staff members that said, "Hey, be you and go out there. That's what these kids need." And I got out of that cocoon. I was not only able to change. So I got to tell you this one. So one of the programs I have is Hispanic Leadership Lowrider Bike Club. And years ago, I had came up with the idea, man, it'd be cool if we could build like a lowrider car with these kids. And I was almost too afraid to bring it up, right? Like, man, what are people gonna think? And I would bring it up to a few people, and their perception of it was maybe gang related. So then I would just be like, yeah, I was just thinking, I would kind of back down. And I finally decided, I said no. One of the issues that I was seeing was that even though I had Hispanic Leadership Club and it was great, it had become highly academic, and there were still kids that were kind of slipping between the cracks, that weren't coming to school, weren't getting good grades, weren't really doing great in school. And I know that data shows that in order to reach those kids, you have to have mentors, right? That's super important. But how then do you tell a kid that, in order for him, you tell him, hey, you're not coming to school, you're not getting good grades, but listen, I need you to stay after school so we can go with some mentors and you can talk about your feelings, right? Good luck. So I said, you know what, I'm going to reach into who I am as a Chicano, and I am going to find what I'm good at, and that was lowriding. So I got a small grant from the Olathe Public Schools Foundation, and I built a lowrider bike, and I had it at Olathe North, and the kids would be like, "Yo, that's tight." I'm like, "Yeah, it's cool." Hey man, can I have it? And I said, Mommy, you can come build it Monday after school if you want, right? All right, right. And so they were coming for the bike. Once they got there, I was hitting them up with the mentors and we were talking about stuff and different things. And slowly but surely, I thought, one day I was talking to them about the police, and the kids were like, we don't like the cops. And I said, well, why? And obviously they haven't had positive interactions, and not super negative one, but just in general, I got pulled over, I got a ticket, whatever. And so I said, you know what, you need to meet somebody from the PD so we can have this dialogue. And at first I was like, nah, I don't want to. But I was able to go to the chief, and we were able to get an amazing police officer named Logan Bonney, who was just super down to earth. A long story short, man, our lowrider program, we build custom lowrider bikes that each kid gets to customize, but the entire time they're in school, when they graduate, they get to keep it. We build regular bikes that people donate, and we give them away to the community. But the police department now has a lowrider bike sitting in the chief's office, and we're building them a lowrider car that they're going to be cruising Olathe with as a police department. So not only did we switch kind of the kids' point of view, but also, the community's point of view. And the most amazing thing is that we're at 100% graduation rate, and 100% of those kids have gone to college. And I could tell you that that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't using, who I am. And my identity, and relating to the kids by saying, hey, I am a Latino and I get it, because I'm like La India Maria, right? Ni de aquí ni de allá. And and I know how it feels, and I know what you're going through. And I was also the interpreter at home, So, if I would have just said, hey, I'm not going to go there because I have to reflect this professional image, right, of what a teacher is or what an educator is, that would have blocked me from being able to do the other stuff that I was able to do.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I have a tangential question. Like, what's your favorite tattoo?
What's my favorite tattoo? Probably my favorite tattoo, man, is one that I have here for my friends that were in the military. Just kind of remembering them. And I was in Germany in 2003, where a lot of my friends were being shipped off to Iraq, and so just to kind of remember them. But I mean, they all have meaning.
Yeah.
And I hid them for a long time. I was in really super hot weather wearing long sleeves for a long time.
We have Cecilia. Hey, Cecilia, good to see you. Thank you for sharing your story, Eric. So as we get to wrap up a little bit, actually, tell me. So today I got to see a fantastic space. I think it's called the Spot.
The Spot.
The Spot. So tell me a little bit more about what's happening at the Spot.
All right, man. Yeah. So years ago, I was really kind of irritated with the fact that we would tell kids not to do something, right? Like, don't get in trouble, don't do this, don't do that. And I literally legit was asking questions. I'd be like, so what can they do? Well, I'm not sure, And so I started looking around, and I'm like, man, we're telling these kids not to do something. Well, we have to give them something to do, right? And so I was able to create this program called The Spot. And the reason I called it The Spot was because, when you're young, you're like, where do I want to kick it? Let's go kick it at the spot. It's the place to be. And so I was able to work with Center of Grace, and we did it there for a while, but then we had to move because they were renting the facility. We did it again in another gym here at Mill Creek, and then they renovated the building, and it kind of went away. Well, I'm part of a bunch of different committees in the community, and one of them is disproportionate minority contact, where we see the disproportionality within kids going into the system. And while we were there, I was like, you know what, we absolutely need to do something for kids that are in the system, but man, we need to just prevent them from going there. So we need to have this prevention program. I would love to recreate this program I've had in the past called The Spot. Well, one of the gentlemen that works in the Department of Corrections said, you know what, we have an empty space. Maybe you can come check it out, and maybe this is something that you can work in. And so I was like, yeah, they probably have a small gym or something. Man, I came there, you saw the space. It's like a small school. We have an indoor place, an outdoor place, classrooms, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, Yes, we will make this work. So we made a partnership, man, with the Johnson County Department of Corrections. We made the Johnson County Mental Health, Olathe Library, the Olathe Police Department, and the Olathe Fire Department, and the school district to put this program together called the Spot. So every Tuesday after school, kids can come into the Spot 100% for free, and they get to participate in many of the different activities with all the different mentors. So we have an area where kids have arcade games, a pool table, foosball table, ping pong table. We have another area that we're working on, which is going to be a recording studio slash podcast room. We have a homework spot where kids can go in and they can do homework with mentors. We have computers there. We have an outdoor spot that has you could play basketball or soccer or things like that. A video game room, which is very popular, where we have different computers and video game consoles there. We have a kitchen for kids to be able to go and get food, and we have a maker space for kids to do and get creative with. So it's completely free. It's all run by all the mentors and the different partners. And again, right now it's open on Tuesdays, but we hope to be able to open it up more days as we get more kids.
Yeah, I gotta say, as walking through the space, first and foremost, like beautiful space, and then two, like there's just a lot of potential there, right, to bring in the community, and I love the vision that you've built around it, and I think that I'm excited for all the possibilities that are associated with the Spot. As we wrap up, I always ask this question of our educators. So, like, what's one thing that the community can do to support you? What does that look like?
I think something that I always appreciate is to just get in contact with folks that have connections or have the ability to just work with me and providing more services for the kids. We can always at the Spot for sure, use snacks. If people want to donate a video game console or things like that. If you want to be a mentor. Man, we love mentors, especially if you're, a person of color. You want to come down and be a mentor. We just have to run you through our youth mentor program, which takes about a day, and then you have to do a background check, and you can come in there and be a mentor. I mean, I think that's probably the most important thing, really, that I would love to see is more, especially Raza down there, mentoring our kids.
Well, you heard it here first. Erik is in need of snacks, food, maybe a PlayStation 5.
PlayStation 5, yes, if you can get your hands on one.
Maybe PlayStation 5, and definitely some mentors. And so if you're interested in supporting the work that Erik is doing, I will make sure to have contact information there in the comments. Erik, thank you so much for joining us for an edition of Ask an Educator. And thank you so much for all the work that you do for our community.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Everyone else, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. We look forward to seeing you at one of our next live streams.